Welcome to Secrets for an Inspirational Life with Mimi Novic, the place where every heart tells its story. Whether it's inspiration, courage or hope you need, you've come to the right place. Sit back and enjoy the journey with us. Subscribe below to be sure you don't miss future episodes.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Secrets for an Inspirational Life. How are you all today? How is life treating you? I hope that you are doing some beautiful little things that actually make your heart at peace, bring a little joy to your life, no matter what is going on in this mad world that we are all living on at this very moment in time. And just before I started the podcast tonight, I looked up at the sky and it was very, very clear. And there were so many stars out there. And I thought, my goodness, look at this. Here we are all on this extraordinary planet. And each of us has a star with our name written on it. And that I'm certain of. And what are we going to do with that special gift? That's something I think that all of us strive to find out, strive to achieve in some way. Some of us knowingly and some of us unknowingly. And my guest tonight is actually hopefully going to put a little light on all of this and inspire us all. Now, I am delighted to welcome my guest today, who is Dr. Paul Artale. Paul is a motivational speaker, author, and coach dedicated to helping individuals overcome their challenges and live their best lives. His inspirational messages are deeply rooted in his personal journey of overcoming physical disability to achieve remarkable successes, including playing and coaching college football, earning his PhD, and inspiring thousands around the globe through his powerful motivational talks. Paul's journey is nothing short of an inspiring miracle, really. Born with a physical disability, he pursued his dream of playing college football, ultimately walking on to the University of Toronto team after being cut from his high school squad. His experiences in overcoming adversity have shaped his approach to teaching in major organizations such as Google, Mattel, Ford. That is just to name a few. Paul is committed to helping people create the life and also organizations to be more inspired, as detailed in his book, The 2-Year-Old's Guide to Work-Life Balance. Today, he shares his journey. Welcome, dear Paul.
Hi, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you. And where are you calling from today?
I am calling from. Why do I not remember where I'm calling from? I'm calling from I'm calling from Michigan, just outside
around the corner.
just around the corner, across the pond, a couple flights over. Calling from Michigan, from a little town just outside of Flint.
Oh, well, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so lovely to have you here tonight.
It's great. Can't wait to talk politics all the time.
That's a private joke, by the way, to all the listeners out there.
Right. I can't wait to go through my 16-point platform for a better America. No, we're good. We're not talking politics here, folks.
We're not talking. I said to Paul, I always ask my guests, don't talk politics. And so he had a cheeky little joke there. Now, Paul, you
Yes.
have done so much and you do so much.
Mm-hmm.
How did all this come about? Let's go back. Tell us a little bit about your life and how this incredible life of yours began.
Sure. The question of how and why is probably good. That'll probably take a lot of therapy for me to get a definitive answer. But I think it starts, I'm Canadian, born in Toronto, and Yeah, I was born with a limb difference, so I'm missing fingers, shortened forearms, and I mean, I th- it's hard to not recognize that that definitely has shaped who I am and how I see the world, and to some degree how the world sees me in that interaction. Those two points of view colliding
Mm,
a lot of the time, I think, had a lot to do with that attitude. Also, I grew up. I'm a family from a family of immigrants, right? Like my family's originally from Sicily, right? And they moved, most of them moved to Canada. And I think, and so I'm first generation. And I think being in that community, which valued hard work, and we just really came in, worked with our hands, built, my grandfather sacrificed so that, we could have a better life, like that. Being in that world, definitely, I think, let me believe and let me witness that the work ethic, and I just think the value in having a community around you to support you. I think that's sort of, that's the base level of what happened.
Now, this is a condition that you were actually born with. It's not something that happened later on in life.
No, complete birth, which disappoints a lot of people. Everybody wants a story, uh, so how I became a great storyteller by telling people lies, essentially, because people are very disappointed to find out that I was just born this way. But yeah, there was no accident, medical condition. My mom didn't have to take drugs. Just it is what it is. And I think from a, because we're here to talk a little bit about personal development and the journey and the spiritual journey,
Mm,
I think that it's very simple when you're born with something or something just happens and there's no reason. But I do think that does cause a lot of questioning and introspection growing up. I mean, at different points in my life, specifically related to my how I look physically, there were points where not you, I was contemplating, like why me, or what does this mean, because there is no accident, right? There is nothing that happened beyond just statistics or, or something like that. So I think
mm,
for me that early on that was tough, and then you learn to accept it. But when you learn to accept it and not question it or think of what could have been in any sort of way that I think is damaging to your to your psyche,
mm.
that then I think that's actually quite liberating for me to say, like, this is who I am, this is how I am. There is no changing it, really. Not too long ago, probably about 10 years ago now, I went to my physician, and annual physical, and then he looked at my arms and he said, there's great prosthetics out there. Do you want to go to a clinic and see about possibilities? They're doing great things with robotics. And I thought, wow, like, robot arms, I do want to play with some robot arms. I had no intention of getting the robot arms, but I'm a big science fiction fan. I was like, I need to go do this. And I went, and what was interesting was, after I met with the specialist, who said to me, he said, there is no prosthetic that we have that would be better than what you've got. And why are you here? And I told him, I said, I'm here to play with robotics. He said, we can't do that. But I think that was also very liberating in its sense of that, even the medical establishment finally said, like, you're good just the way you are. And I think that can be really hard for us to accept who we are, because when we don't, it's really hard to be our authentic selves to ourselves, and it's hard for us to move forward.
Uh, This is a very good point, and it's a very noble point, because I wanted to ask you because there's a lot of people that I talk to, and a lot of people that I know, actually, quite a lot of people, where they develop their disability afterwards. They were fine up until to a point in their life, and after that, they became completely different as people. Now, also, I have to say about myself, I've had different things and happen in my life. And for me, it's a little bit of prior to that and then after the event, so to speak. But with you, it was always part of, in a way, who you were. How did that affect you? Or did it affect you even growing up?
I think it affects how is a good question. it depended on the developmental point. I think so when I do seminars for companies on disability inclusion in the workplace, how to create a disability friendly environment. And in those workshops, I don't talk about law and compliance at all, really. I talk about one of the things I talk about is disability identity development. And so there's three stages to this, and I'll get to why this is important in a second, right? The first stage is the what we call it's basically the denial phase, right? You're not aware that you have a disability, and quite often in our families and sometimes even in society, we're either hidden or told we don't have a disability, right? There's this sort of bubble put around. And at some point that bubble will burst or should burst, because at some point we come into contact with something that says you're different and this doesn't fit the system, or this doesn't fit sort of the societal norm or concept or our concept of what a normal hand is, et cetera, right? So then you get into the second phase, which is I call it it's the ugly phase, right? It's the phase where you have to really reconcile who you are. It's the why me. It's the phase where you will try and achieve things just to prove people wrong, not because they're best for you, which can be problematic. We call it the superhero phase. And, as a child, I spent a lot of time in that as a child. And then I kind of progressed to the third phase, which is the acceptance phase, where you're good with who you are and you're fully integrated and things like that. But for me in my life, I mean, there was a lot, I think, through, fourth through eighth grade, a lot of me trying to reconcile who I was and figuring that out and being in a space where I wanted to challenge myself to be whatever I wanted to be, because there was a lot of messaging I was getting that said I couldn't. And, especially in the athletic world, right? Because someone who looks like me typically is not someone who you see on TV as an athlete, especially back then. I grew up in the 80s and the early 90s, and there were very few. There was a baseball pitcher named Jim Abbott who had one hand, and he was like my hero growing up because he was the closest to looking like me that I could see. And so that created possibilities for me. And then into my high school days, working up the courage to try out for football, American football, not not what the rest of the world calls football, and that was someone with short arms and missing fingers trying to play a sport like that is at least 50% using your upper body. That there was a lot of opposition. So then going back to the identity development model of I accept myself as an athlete. Maybe I don't. Why me? Right. And how do I get through this? And there's all those ugly phases. So I think my youth was really about a lot of points where I was struggling with why I was, and then becoming okay with it until the next challenge really presented itself, and then kind of repeating the cycle a little bit again, which happens. And by the way, this three-step process also applies to someone that comes into disability, let's say in the middle of their lives. It's the same thing. It's like
Yeah,
denial, struggle, and then acceptance, right? And that for me was the process. But what came out of the process is the more it happened, the more comfortable I came with it, and the more I pushed myself to do whatever it is I desired. Because I realized really early on that if you listen to what people tell you in terms of your limitations or what they think you can and can't do, regardless if it was physical, it's happened to me, even I think have nothing to do with how I am physically, that you're never going to be happy and you're never going to try anything, because most people are risk averse. And I just, by nature, I'm not. Like, I am risk averse, but I get to a point where I get bored with the status quo and I want to try to do that thing that I want to do. And if you tell me that I can't do it, I got to the point where I said, I don't care about your opinion. I'm going to go do it anyway, because it's something I want to do. It's not to prove people wrong. And I think that's an important message for people out there is I don't believe doing things to prove the world wrong or proving your naysayers wrong is great motivation most of the time. It's great for a short burst, but it's not great for sustained motivation, because the reality is those that naysay and put you down, those are the folks that actually don't care if you succeed. And if you do succeed, they're often going to question your success and try to invalidate it. And I just started learning to put all that out of mind through a very long process. And that sort of became the foundation of how I see the world today.
absolutely incredible. And as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, were there sort of milestones in your life? Were there people in your life growing up that helped you, that believed in you to
Mhm.
have such really a formidable spirit that you have? Or was it something that was innately already within you?
I think it's both. I think it's all with all of us. It's innately in us. We have the ability. We're born with a lot of the abilities and tools to be successful, but we don't always know that they're there. And so I've had mentors, still have mentors throughout my life that have helped pull different things out of me and build confidence or give me perspectives that are helping me. Like as a child, I mean, it was my parents who fought uh, for me to be integrated into the school system, which seems preposterous even in 1980s in Canada, that a child who's missing fingers and shortened forearms was basically they were trying to get me to go to a school for students with special needs, and my mom kept saying like there's nothing wrong with his ability to learn something, right? But so I mean, for me, I learned that after the fact, but I think about what would my life look like if they went the route of let's just do something, let's just fit into that system and see what happens. Like I think about that system wasn't set up for someone to necessarily be I don't want to say successful because there was probably some merit to those programs, but wouldn't have set me up to be where I'm at today. Let's just say it there. I had some different aunts and uncles who had different points in my life, just without being preachy or motivational, just in small impromptu conversations, would tell me things like you're a great speaker, or you need to come out of don't be afraid to come out of your shell. We see it, the world needs to see it, things like that. One of the biggest influences in my life was my cousin Joe, who was born with muscular dystrophy. I talk about him on stage sometimes, and he was really my mentor in terms of navigating this world with a difference. I don't like the word disability for a lot of reasons, but really disability, and it's got negative connotations, and I think it always will. But really, it was, he was in a wheelchair. I had a limb difference, but he really showed me like we look different. But that doesn't mean as much as you think it does. And here's how to navigate that. And was there, he was motivational when I was first trying out for football. He was one of my few supporters. He was just always kind of a believer in what I did, and he kind of had like a don't give a crap attitude to himself and life, and that I think
Mm.
that started to rub off on me. Of again, ignore the naysayers, like don't worry about people. People are born with these preconceived notions, culturally. In our culture, there was preconceived notions of disability, of course, in Canadian Western culture, there's preconceived notions, and he's like those aren't going to go away overnight, if at all. So you have to learn to be your best self and go with it. And also, he was the mentor who taught me to have fun with it, like see the humor in how absurd some of this stuff is, right? Like don't
Mm.
get when you're at the buffet and someone offers to take the plate for you and go through the buffet, it's like don't get angry, even though you have a right to be. See the humor in it, have fun with it. So which hasn't happened to me in years, but I mean, I can remember once I was just a little saucy, and the person was like, "Can you need some help?" Like, sure. And I think I took them around the whole room, just because. And
Yeah, just
because you sometimes you just gotta lean into it. Don't fight it.
yeah.
But he really just taught me those. I mean, those ideals, and they were never done again in like most of the time in a serious heart to heart way. It was always lighthearted when we had those talks, but when I was down, he would find a way to work it into the conversation to get me sort of back on track and to just understand things and to really encourage me to just live my life on my terms. And because that's what he did, and I've just always taken that to heart.
And at what point do you think, Paul, that you actually made a decision that you were going to help other people?
Good question. I'll answer this from the perspective of my speaking career, because before a speaker, I was a teacher, and you could argue that that was probably the beginning, and it was. And as a coach, a football coach, that was there as well. But in the speaking context, I would say probably 5 years into my career, I was
Hmm.
struggling because I do what a lot of speakers do who have a story to tell, or even just they're experts in something they want to share it with the world. Is that I was really focused on talking about me, 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 me. And then one day a speaker asked, like, what's in it for the audience? And I started to think about that. And I answered initially with the just motivate them, because it's so easy to say I'm going to be a motivational speaker, and really, it's a huge trope. And so started thinking about, like, what is it? If someone listens to my story about being cut in high school, 6 year absence from playing the sport, and then I find my way onto a semi-professional team, which is really just code for beer league, and then I walk on and play college football, and and do these things. What do people gain from that? And that's where I started coming up with, in that, my motivational keynote called Hit Hard, the three must-have mindsets you need to build resilience. I'm like, oh, my talk is about resilience. My talk is about building that strength to move on, to not just achieve a goal, but sometimes just when times are tough, just how to put your head down and get through it. And I think when I had that paradigm shift, I started working it into my talks, and all of a sudden, I mean, I did better from a business perspective, but also I felt better because now people were coming up to me, instead of saying, "Oh, that was a good speech." They were coming up to me and sharing their challenges, their successes. People would email me or message me after the fact and be like, "Hey, I thought about your talk, and this is what I've been doing because of it." And that's, to me, that's really powerful. And a lot of times they're not like massive, what you would people would think is massive wins. I haven't had any millionaires message me yet, but if you're out there, message me. Uh, you can buy me dinner. But I mean, there's small success. I recently had someone come up to me who'd seen me speak at a few different engagements here in Michigan, and just told me that they had broken up from a toxic relationship, based on something I'd said in one of my talks. And like, that's powerful, right? That makes you want to help people more. And so I'd say about 5 years in is when I first got the taste for seeing myself as an educator and someone who could help people versus just someone who's sharing a fun story and having fun on stage.
I think your story is something that really sort of touched me because, as I said to you, it was something that there was a certain sort of effervescence about your spirit that I really liked. And I thought, you're going to be a fantastic guest for sure. I knew that. But I wanted to ask you, is it something that you struggle with to remain so positive? Or is it something that is now, in fact, a reflection of the courage that you hold inside?
Like everyone else, I struggle to be positive at times. I think
Mm,
one of the misconceptions about motivation, I speak on like work-life balance, is that it's a destination. Like, you are now motivated and you are good. You're
mm,
certified fresh for 15 years as motivated. It doesn't work that way. There's not one, you don't wake up one day and say, I have achieved work-life balance. It's it's a habit, it's a muscle, it's a it's a mindset, but it's more importantly a practice. And so the idea of being positive, for example, there are days that are not great because of something's going on in the family. I'm in the speaking business. There are days where you get rejected. You have to become okay with that, and I'm totally used to it now. You apply to speak at a conference or a client. You write a proposal. You spend time. You think they love you. They think everyone, and then you get the final verdict and say, "Oh, we went with someone else." And sometimes for reasons that are if they share why, sometimes for reasons completely out of your control, right?
mm,
We wanted someone that didn't have to fly in, especially these days with air travel being not as reliable as it once was, right? Like, we want someone who can drive in, and we're in Texas, you're in Michigan. That's just not going to work. We want someone who we could guarantee could come to speak with us in the winter. Just little things. So of course you get down. I
mm,
just remember that it's a cycle, and that if I'm not feeling great, I think to acknowledge that I'm not feeling great. Is this something I need to talk to a professional about? Usually not. It's just, is what can I do to get myself out of this, right? I have sort of my checklist, go exercise, watch comedy. I love comedy. Comedy is such a great tool. And or just get up and do something. You got rejected from a couple of gigs you wanted, go apply to a few more, get that momentum going, reach out to someone, go speak to a local community organization that probably won't be that you won't make any money, but you're just going to go speak again, back to your point about helping people. You can help people and get to know people and just get out of that negative funk. And so for me, uh, I'll be honest, I'm not always positive. I can be really grumpy for
Mm.
long periods. Ask my wife. But I think you got to learn to pick yourself up and not stay in the funk. And I think if you can do that, then that's where the win is. That's what I remind myself, because you're going to be, it's life just doesn't work that way where everything's great for all the time.
And this is it's absolutely, I totally agree with you, because people mostly feel that unless they're feeling 1000% happy, I say that in inverted commas, all of the time, then there is something wrong. And people are afraid, actually, to feel their real feelings. And like you said, there are ups and downs in everyone's life. But there is a fear now out there, Paul. I see this a lot, and I'm sure you do, of actually feeling this feeling that I actually need help. I need some help with either being motivated. Doesn't have to be a motivational speaker, of course. I'm talking about someone that can help them get back on their feet again, no matter what is happening in their life, because the world is tough,
Mhm.
especially at the moment. And what do you say to people then? Because people are in such a desperate need.
I would say two things. Focus on what you can control, which sometimes feels like very little, but it's as simple as what can I control today to feel better, to move this forward. Like, you can't stay stagnant. So ask yourself, what's the next micro step? What's the next small thing I can do to make things better? It could be on a business level. If it's business you're struggling with and that's where the funk is, then what's the call I need to make, the email I need to answer or send? Just one small piece, something that makes you move forward, even if it's a microscopic step, because that starts to build positive momentum. And then honestly, the other part of it is, and I'm a very big advocate of, is who is the professional that needs to help me? And so if we're talking about mental health, go to therapy, get some sort of uh, perspective on a professional perspective. A lot of companies, at least in the United States, have employee assistant programs where you can get 6 free counseling sessions. I'm not sure how it works on in your side in terms of if psychological therapy is covered under the National Health Service, but like,
It's
but get
very difficult to
right.
get that on the national health. Yeah.
Right. So, but find a way. And if the problem isn't like psychological from that perspective, it's I need help with business, raising my children. My child might have this condition or this situation is going on. Like, who are the experts that can help you? Sometimes that is a professional transactional relationship. Sometimes it's joining a Facebook group. I have a couple of groups and communities I'm part of digitally that part of other parts of my identity and part of the things I do. Some of them as simple as hobbies hobbies I have, but how can I lean into those to get the advice I need to get a perspective? Like my son plays, he plays football, as in like the rest of the world football. He's a keeper, and there's a great community for keeper parents on Facebook I'm part of, and because it can be tough. When your child's in that big net and getting shot on, 16 shots a game, and parents can be mean. At least in the United States, soccer parents, sorry, football parents are mean. Uh, you know, I need perspective. I don't necessarily need a counselor for that, but it's good to talk to other people who've been in similar shoes to me to give me different perspective. And so I think it's those are the things I would recommend is do something small in the direction that puts you in a positive direction. And number two, get professional advice. And professional has a broad definition.
Yes. And I think it's very good advice that you're giving here in that don't be alone in this
100%.
this is what I really wanted to ask you is especially um, people now that somehow have become so solitary. They may be amongst thousands of people or hundreds of people, but you see families even. Everybody is solitary. And I know we all have our own world. and we all have our own path through life. But this isolation that I'm seeing and hearing about a lot, how do we deal with that?
Well, isolation is, again, it's, you have find community. Don't, that's all. I mean, it's finding finding friends as an adult is hard. We always talk about
Yeah.
friendship is often thought about, forming friendship is always looked at from a childhood adolescence perspective, but I would say the isolation thing is really about finding community, or again finding the help, but don't do any, nothing can be done alone. True success is not done alone. I think largely we've debunked that myth even in the motivational realm. I mean, you still got a lot of speakers out there like, you need to get up and blah blah blah, and it's true, you need to get up, you need to go fire it up, but you also need people to help you. And even the most successful motivational speakers that are out there have huge teams behind them. And so if you're feeling isolated, it's who can help me and how, and know that I'm not alone. And if the isolation is more emotional, I mean, find somewhere to go and just hang. Don't even worry about making a friend, for example, but go. There's lots of community groups that are always looking for people to sort of go to their events and participate and engage, and start there. But don't, the worst thing you can do is just sit in isolation.
Yes, because that doesn't create any type of atmosphere and it's
Right.
a very dark place sometimes. And I'm not talking about when you feel that you have a certain depth to, it's not isolation, there is a certain peace. But I'm talking about when people are desperate and they need
Hmm.
help and they can't get to, they can't afford it basically. Because a lot in the UK, and I don't know how it is abroad, but it's very difficult to get help for psychological issues or when you're feeling that something mentally, you need support in some way. And we rely on people such as yourself, Paul, who can actually ignite us to keep on going, even
Right.
for another day.
Right. Day by day. It's one step at a time. And I think that's the other thing. And I'm very future focused in how I look at things. And I think that's a big asset to me, but it also can really be demotivating because I'm so focused on where I want to be a year from now that that can be daunting, or you don't feel like you're making the progress. So it's focused. It's day by day. It's hour by hour. Sometimes just figure out what you need, and go find that resource to get it. And there are a lot of, to this day, hotlines. If you're a spiritual person, and even if you're not necessarily part of a specific religious group, a lot of them, talk to sometimes religious leaders will hear you if it's there's people out there that help, is my point. And you have to seek it a little bit of time, but a little bit at a time, but it's there. And so just keep making those efforts. And here's a cool thing: when you make those efforts, then it becomes a habit, it becomes a knowledge base. And so eventually you'll get out of your funk, and at some point the funk will come back, because again, as we've discussed, that's life. But now the second time it happens, you've got some resources and methods that work for you that will help you, and so you won't stay in there nearly as long.
That is super advice because it is a tool then that you can use when you have your times when they are not so good and the darkness seems to arrive.
Hmm.
It's survival methods, isn't it?
Yeah, but simply put, it's survival. I mean, it's emotional or motivational survival, but it's a form of survival.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to ask you, are you a spiritual person, Paul?
Yes, yes, I am.
Because you've mentioned it a couple of times. Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, I'm raised Catholic because I'm Italian, and that's the choice you're given. But I think for me, it's a lot of my spirituality is really about conversations with God, and thinking about just asking questions, and being attuned to answers that come in forms that you don't necessarily expect. Right? Just I haven't had a burning bush talk to me in quite some time, but I think the answers come eventually. And so it's for me, a lot of my spirituality is dialogues with God, and thinking about and asking those questions that are difficult sometimes, or introspective, and sort of asking for insight. And so that's kind of where my spirituality is based, really on truth seeking, seeking answers, and going from there, trying to impact increase my knowledge versus, you know, please God, give me $1 million and a Maserati. That would be great. If that God's out there, hook me up. We're there. No, I'm kidding. But
Um, do you believe? I mean, I believe this, so I want to know what your beliefs are on this. That there is such a thing called destiny,
mhm,
and that you in your life and what you have been given, and people, all of us in our lives, what we have been given has actually been predestined.
mhm. Yeah, I don't know if I'm as much a believer in that, because everyone's got their own view of destiny. So who's right? I focus on what I can control, or what actions I can take, and the rest, like I just submit to the fact that I certain things I don't have control over. What's going to happen is going to happen. You might call that destiny. Some people just might call that the result, and that's fine. I mean, I once competed in something called the World Championships of Public Speaking, and it's a subjective contest, right? And so you're being judged like a figure skater on your speech. And I think the first time I did it, I was really trying to win, and then the second, after going through it, realizing like the judges are going to score you how they're going to score you, and you cannot control that. The second time I did it, my mentality was, I'm going to go out there and I can control my performance. I can go out there and really entertain the audience, and I know I can deliver on my speech. What the judges do, I can't control, so I'm going to go do that. And I went out there and I had the room. It was a great speech. I lost. I came in third. The guy in that semifinal, that the person that won, not to take away from him, but threw hats into the audience. And I'm like, maybe that put him over the top. And I can't control what he was going to do, and how maybe the judges loved it clearly. So maybe I should have given out free footballs and kicked them into the audience or something. I don't know, but that's my piece on it, is like, I just do what I have to do, and what happens happens. And I don't concern myself with trying to like manipulate the future. I just sort of let it happen. And after it happens, my question is always, did I do everything? Like, what can I learn from this? And did I do everything possible to get to this point? Could I have done something different? Because that's where the real growth comes from me. And that's where a lot of my mentality is based on growing and developing.
Now, the question I want to ask you, because you believe in God, I can see, do you believe that God is the one that gave you this condition?
I don't know. I don't
Hmm.
know. They say we're made in God's image, so I mean, there's a discrepancy somewhere, right? I mean, maybe you all are the models that were wrong. I don't know. I don't concern myself with that, because
Hmm.
I don't know the answer. So again, I don't. Yeah, I don't concern. Again, it just is, and so we move forward with that.
And the reason I ask you is because I ask myself,
Hmm.
am I, and the conditions that I've been given,
Hmm.
is that the result of God giving them to me? And is it that God is telling me, in a way, that all that's happened in my life, for example, is because there's a greater purpose to it? Because once we have known this pain of being human, all of us, and the suffering that all of us incur at some point in our life,
Hmm.
is this actually that some of us, for example, I have been given my conditions, you've been given yours, and everybody has their own. Is this actually a path along eternity
Hmm.
that is specific to our soul, in order for not only for us to learn and to prosper along this road, but also in order for us to teach other people.
Well, I mean, from the spiritual point of view, I remember as a good young Catholic boy, in church, let us profess the mystery of faith because faith is mystery. And so the parts about was something happening to you, is that on purpose or not? Again, to me, that's all mystery, and we as humans are just trying to figure out if we, it's like the Sudoku puzzle. Did we get the puzzle? We don't know. But to the part about the purpose to help others, to teach others, I think that's just something as humans we should be doing. I mean, literally, that's how we advance as a species. That is how we advance as a society, is to share the knowledge that is useful, that can help others, so that we're not continually literally reinventing the wheel, right? And that is done by not being
Mhm.
selfish and by sharing what we know to help others. So I focus on that.
I absolutely, it's awe inspiring to listen to you and what you have achieved. I think it's fantastic. And for me, it's such an incredible life that you've led that for me, it sort of it inspires hope that no matter what happens in life, no matter what we're going through in life, each and every single one of us, that there is a way to keep hopeful and to have that courage to keep going, not to give up, as you said, to ask for help when we need it and not to feel alone in this world.
Yeah. But yes, that is my answer to that. I
Uh,
mean, you summarized everything. It's that is it. Asking for help is key. We're not alone, so don't think you have to be alone. I'm a big movie fan. Good Italian boy. Love Rocky. Rocky had Mick. Rocky had Adrian. Rocky had Apollo. Rocky
oh,
had Paulie.
yes.
Right? Rocky as a character is very isolated.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Rocky, and if you
yeah.
watch the original Rocky movie, the guy's got no one.
Yeah.
Nobody. It's through an opportunity and then recruiting a network, intentionally and not intentionally, of people to help him and building that network, that
Mm.
Rocky's able to sort of transform his life. So it's not done in a vacuum.
Amazing. And how is your family? I mean, with you doing this type of work, what do they think about it?
Uh, to my kids, I'm just dad. I think they believe I'm an internet star, which is hilarious because I did not plant that in their heads. But they don't. I'm just dad for them. I don't talk a lot about it at home. They know what I do. They'll see me online doing trainings and stuff for companies, or if I'm on the road or something. And so, but largely I'm just dad. I work really hard to stay involved in their lives. And have reshaped some of my speaking and doing more virtual or more local or regional, so that I can be around for their football tournaments and my daughter's a figure skater, her figure skating competitions, so I can be part of their life and not just put the business first, because those are the memories. I mean, those are things that fill my cup. Talk about feeling isolated and pick me up. I mean, just watching my kids enjoy sports or activities, theater, different things they do, that's what gives me great joy, even when I'm having a terrible day. So they're doing well, and they just, like I said, I'm mainly just dad at this point. Maybe one day that'll change. They're asking me for their own YouTube channel, so maybe one day I'll be a producer of their stuff. I don't know, but they're
Oh,
well. Yeah,
how old are they?
they are 8 and 11.
Ah, okay. So they're impressed. They're going to be impressed with their
Yeah,
dad.
I got a couple more years before that changes, so I'm gonna enjoy that.
Now, Paul, tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, 2-year-old's guide to work-life balance. Good
Hmm.
segue from the children, because it was inspired by my son. At the time, I was on the trajectory to I wanted to be the vice president of a university, in the student services division. And I had gone to a conference for aspiring professionals that wanted to do that, and realized kind of quickly that I didn't want that to be my life. And at the same time, there was a lot of things happening in my job that I didn't like, and they're just pulling me away from my family. And I made this weird realization that I was several hours away, thousands of miles away at a conference, and I was actually interacting more with my family while I was away at this conference than I would have been if I had stayed at home and been in the office. My house was 15 minutes from my office, and I probably had dinner with my family once or twice a week. Uh, and I said, "There's like that's an imbalance. Like there's something wrong with that."
Mm.
And so the book tells that story and how I really decided I wanted to do more speaking, and it's all done through the framework of my son, who was 2 at the time, who could not speak very much. I had limited vocabulary, as most 2-year-olds do, but the few phrases he had got me to think about work-life balance in a different way, which was not intentional, I'm sure, but the whole book is about that journey and his sayings, and each chapter is one of his sayings and how it relates to that story and what's the life lesson for you. And yeah, it was never meant to be a book. It was supposed to be a blog. It was like 9 lessons my son taught me, and it just turned into a 2-part blog, a 3-part blog, and then it became like 6,000 words. And I said, well, I should just add some activities to this and fill this out a little bit more and turn it into a book, and not particularly a long book, because I feel a book on work-life balance should not be long, because the people that need to read it don't probably have the time to read 500 pages. So I kept it short on purpose too.
And where is it available to buy?
You can go to paulartale.com or Amazon.
Or Amazon. Okay, wonderful. And for people who want to know more about your work, Paul, and all the things that you do and have done, where can they do that? Where can they find out about that?
Yeah, go to my website. It's the easiest. It's paulartale.com, spelled Paulartale, or look at the show notes, .com, and you can learn all about me. You can see clips of me speaking. You can see my commercial, my promo, and you can go there. You can also follow me on social media, Paul_Artale for Instagram followers, or look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me there.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show tonight, and very, very inspiring, I have to say.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Oh, and give my greetings to the United States, a wonderful place I fondly remember, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much.
All right, then. Take care, Paul.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Paul Artale. It is absolutely something quite amazing when we as human beings have this spirit that is unshakable. Literally, that is what life is about. Thank you so much for joining me and my guests, and I wish you beautiful moments, and do something spectacular for yourselves, because you are amazing. Until next time, look after yourselves and lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Secrets for an Inspirational Life, brought to you by your host, Mimi Novic. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast, and see you in the next episode. For more information about Mimi Novic and her books, music, and inspirational work, take a look at her website, www.miminovic.co.uk.